The rain hammered down on the Seattle streets as Emma Chen navigated her aging Toyota through the Friday evening traffic. At 28, she was exhausted from another 12-hour shift at the pediatric clinic where she worked as a nurse. Her scrubs were still damp from when a frightened child had accidentally knocked over a water pitcher, and all she wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. The traffic light ahead turned yellow, then red. Emma pressed the brake pedal, but nothing happened. Her foot went straight to the floor, meeting no resistance. Panic seized her chest as she pumped the brakes frantically, but her car continued rolling forward, picking up speed on the slight downhill slope. No, 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 she gasped, gripping the steering wheel as she tried to steer away from the intersection. She laid on the horn, but it was too late. A delivery truck entered the intersection from her right, and despite the driver's attempt to swerve, the vehicles collided with a sickening crunch of metal. The impact sent Emma's car spinning across the wet pavement. Her head slammed against the side window despite her seatbelt, and stars exploded across her vision. The Toyota came to rest against a concrete barrier. The entire front end crumpled like an accordion. Steam, or was it smoke, began rising from under the hood. Emma tried to move, but pain shot through her left leg. She looked down and saw it trapped beneath the crushed dashboard. The metal twisted around her shin like a vice. Blood trickled down her forehead from a cut somewhere in her hairline. She reached for her phone, but it had been thrown somewhere in the impact, lost in the darkness of the footwell. Then she smelled it. Gasoline, sharp and acrid, mixed with the smell of burning plastic. Orange flames began licking up from beneath the hood, small at first, but growing rapidly. The smoke thickened, filling the cabin, and Emma began to cough. "Help!" she screamed, pounding on the window with her fist. "Somebody help me!" Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see people gathering, but they kept their distance from the burning vehicle. Someone was on their phone, calling 911, she hoped, but the flames were spreading fast. Too fast. Emma pulled desperately at her trapped leg, but the metal wouldn't budge, and every movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body. The heat was becoming unbearable. Emma's lungs burned as she gasped for air through the smoke. This couldn't be how it ended. Not like this, not trapped and alone, burning alive while people watched from a safe distance. Across the street, Jung-hoon J.H. Kang sat in the back of his black Mercedes, reviewing documents on his tablet. At 36, he commanded one of the most powerful Korean criminal organizations on the West Coast. His tailored Italian suit cost more than most people earned in a month, and the Rolex on his wrist could have paid off Emma's student loans twice over. His business tonight was simple: a meeting with a local politician who needed a reminder about keeping certain promises. But the screech of metal and the gasps of the crowd drew his attention from his papers. Through the tinted window, J.H. saw the crashed Toyota and the flames beginning to engulf it. He also saw what no one else seemed to notice: a woman trapped inside, pounding on the window, her mouth open in a scream he couldn't hear over the rain and traffic. "Boss, we should go," his driver, Min-soo, said from the front seat. "We don't want to be involved in." "Stop the car," J.H. interrupted, his hand already on the door handle. "But boss, I said stop the car." J.H.'s voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. Min-soo pulled over, and before he could argue further, J.H. was out of the vehicle and running toward the burning wreck. The crowd had formed a loose semicircle around the accident, everyone recording on their phones but no one doing anything useful. J.H. pushed through them without ceremony, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles. "Someone should do something," a woman in the crowd said. "The fire department is on the way," another person replied, as if that solved the problem. J.H. reached the Toyota and peered through the driver's side window. The woman inside was conscious but fading, her movements becoming sluggish from smoke inhalation. Blood covered half her face, and he could see her leg was trapped. The flames had now fully engulfed the hood, and were creeping toward the cabin. He tried the door, but it was jammed shut, buckled from the impact. The window was intact, safety glass designed to be difficult to break. J.H. looked around for something to use as a tool, but there was nothing. Behind him, someone shouted, "It's going to explode. Everyone get back." The crowd began to retreat further, but J.H. stood his ground. He had built his empire on making quick decisions in dangerous situations, and this required the same cold calculation. He had perhaps 30 seconds before the fire reached the gas tank. Maybe less. "Get away from your window," he shouted to Emma. but she didn't seem to hear him. Her eyes glazed and unfocused. JH pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around his right arm. Then, using every ounce of strength in his body, he drove his elbow into the window. The first impact did nothing. The second created a small crack. On the third attempt, the safety glass finally spiderwebbed, and on the fourth it shattered into hundreds of small cubes that cascaded into the car's interior. The heat hit him like a physical blow. Flames were now visible inside the engine compartment, and thick black smoke poured from every gap in the crumpled hood. JH reached through the broken window, found the door's interior handle, and wrenched it open. Emma was barely conscious when she felt hands grabbing her shoulders. Through the haze of smoke and pain, she saw a man's face, Asian features, sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, filled with determination. He was saying something to her, but the words seemed to come from very far away. "Stay with me," JH commanded, his voice cutting through her fog. "I'm going to get you out, but I need you to help me. Can you understand?" Emma managed a weak nod. Up close, she could see his white shirt was already streaked with soot, and the smoke was making his eyes water. JH assessed the situation with the tactical precision that had kept him alive in his dangerous profession. Her leg was trapped by the twisted dashboard, but if he could just create enough leverage, he might be able to free her. The problem was time. The flames were now inside the engine compartment, and he could hear a hissing sound that suggested the fire had reached something critical. "This is going to hurt," he warned her, then braced his shoulder against the dashboard and pushed with all his strength. The metal groaned but didn't move. Behind him, he heard Min Su's voice shouting something, probably urging him to abandon the rescue and save himself. JH ignored him. He repositioned himself, planted his feet more firmly, and tried again. This time, the dashboard shifted slightly, maybe an inch, but it was something. Emma gasped in pain but didn't scream. "Tough woman," JH thought with approval. "One more time," he told her. "Just hold on one more time." He pushed again, and this time he felt something give way. The dashboard moved just enough for Emma's leg to slip free. Without hesitation, JH reached in, unclipped her seatbelt, and pulled her toward him. She cried out as her injured leg moved, but he couldn't stop to be gentle. Not now. He half carried, half dragged Emma away from the vehicle. They had made it perhaps 20 feet, when the gas tank exploded with a thunderous boom that knocked them both to the ground. JH threw himself over Emma's body, shielding her from the blast, and the shower of burning debris that rained down around them. The heat was incredible. JH felt his exposed skin burning, smelled his hair singeing, but he kept himself positioned over the woman beneath him until the immediate danger passed. When he finally looked up, the Toyota was completely engulfed in flames, the metal framework already beginning to collapse. "Are you okay?" he asked Emma, carefully rolling off her. She stared at him with wide eyes, her face covered in soot and blood, trembling from shock and pain. You saved my life," she whispered. Before JH could respond, the crowd that had retreated during the explosion now surged forward. Sirens wailed in the distance, ambulances and fire trucks finally arriving. Min Su appeared at JH's side, trying to pull him to his feet. "Boss, we need to go," the driver urged. "The police will be here any second, and you can't be questioned." The meeting, JH waved him off, his attention still on Emma. A paramedic team was running toward them with a stretcher and medical equipment. As they knelt beside Emma and began assessing her injuries, JH started to back away, melting into the crowd. "Wait!" Emma called out, reaching toward him despite the paramedics' attempts to keep her still. "What's your name?" JH paused, looked back at her one last time, and shook his head. Then he disappeared into the rain-soaked crowd, leaving behind only questions and the lingering scent of expensive cologne mixed with smoke. 3 days later, Emma lay in a hospital bed at Seattle Grace Medical Center, her left leg elevated and wrapped in a cast from knee to ankle. She had been lucky. The leg was broken in 2 places. She had a concussion, several bruised ribs, and various cuts and burns, but she was alive. The doctors said she would make a full recovery, though physical therapy would take months. What haunted her wasn't the pain or the injuries. It was the face of the man who had saved her. She couldn't stop thinking about those intense eyes, the strength in his arms, as he pulled her from the burning wreckage. The way he had shielded her from the explosion, with his own body. The police had come to interview her, asking detailed questions about the accident. They told her the brake line on her car had been deliberately cut, clean through, not worn or broken naturally. Someone had tried to kill her, or at the very least, cause her serious harm. The detective, a gruff man named Morrison, seemed particularly interested in whether Emma had any enemies. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she had told him, bewildered. "I take care of sick children. Who would want to hurt me?" Morrison had looked skeptical, but had no answers. The investigation was ongoing. What the detective was more interested in, however, was Emma's description of her rescuer. When she mentioned he was Asian, well-dressed, and seemed to have people with him who called him boss, Morrison's expression had changed. "Can you describe him in more detail?" The detective had pressed. Emma had done her best, but she'd been pretty out of it from the smoke and pain. Asian, probably Korean, based on what she'd heard him say to his companion. 30s, maybe, expensive clothes, an air of authority. But that described thousands of men in Seattle's substantial Korean community. Now sitting alone in her hospital room, Emma scrolled through her phone, looking at the viral videos of her rescue that people had posted online. Dozens of angles, all showing the same thing: her car in flames, a crowd of onlookers doing nothing, and then a man in a suit breaking through her window and pulling her out seconds before the explosion. But in every video, his face was either turned away from the camera or obscured by smoke and rain. It was as if he was a ghost, a guardian angel who appeared in her moment of need and then vanished without a trace. There was a knock on her door, and Emma looked up to see her younger sister, Michelle, entering with a bag of clothes and toiletries. Michelle had been visiting every day, helping Emma deal with insurance companies and arranging for someone to cover her shifts at the clinic. "Any word on who cut your brake lines?" Michelle asked, setting down her bag. Emma shook her head. Detective Morrison said, "They're reviewing security footage from the clinic parking lot, but so far nothing. And the guy who saved you, any leads?" "Nothing. It's like he doesn't exist." Emma paused, then said quietly, "Michelle, the police think he might be involved with organized crime." The detective kept asking questions about whether he seemed dangerous, whether his associates were armed. Michelle's eyes widened. "You think you were saved by a gangster?" "I don't know what to think, but whoever he was, criminal or not, he risked his life to save mine when nobody else would." 2 weeks after the accident, Emma was released from the hospital with a walking boot and strict instructions to rest. She moved temporarily to Michelle's apartment, since her own place was a third-floor walk-up that she couldn't manage with her injuries. She tried to return to normal life, but the knowledge that someone had deliberately tried to harm her cast a shadow over everything. The police investigation had stalled. The security footage from the clinic parking lot had been corrupted, possibly deliberately, and there were no suspects. Emma found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, jumping at unexpected sounds, unable to shake the feeling that she was being watched. She also couldn't stop thinking about her mysterious rescuer. She had started her own investigation, searching online for any information that might lead her to him. What she found disturbed her, based on the descriptions she'd given, and some digging through news articles about organized crime in Seattle. She had narrowed down her savior's likely identity to Jung-Hoon Kang, known in the Korean community as J.H. Kang. He was the head of a powerful criminal organization involved in everything from illegal gambling to protection rackets to international smuggling operations. The photos she found online matched what she remembered: the sharp features, the commanding presence, the expensive clothes. This was a dangerous man, someone the FBI had been trying to build a case against for years. And yet this dangerous man had saved her life without hesitation, asking nothing in return. Emma was torn between gratitude and fear. Should she try to find him? And should she stay as far away from him as possible? What if her attempted murder was somehow connected to him? The decision was taken out of her hands one evening, when Michelle came home from work, looking pale and, "Emma," she said slowly, "there's a man outside." in a black Mercedes. He says he's here to see you. He says you know him. Emma's heart began to race. She hobbled to the window and looked down at the street. Sure enough, there was a sleek black Mercedes, parked at the curb, and leaning against it, looking up at the building, was J.H.K. Their eyes met across the distance. He gave a slight nod, as if confirming her unspoken question. Yes, it's me. Yes, I came to see you. The question is, what will you do about it? Emma made her decision. She grabbed her jacket and started for the door. Emma, wait. Michelle grabbed her arm. You can't go down there. He's a criminal. He saved my life. Michelle, the least I can do is hear what he has to say. What if it's a trap? What if he's the one who cut your brake lines? Emma paused at that. She had considered the possibility, but it made no sense. Why save her if he wanted her dead? I don't think he wants to hurt me, she said. If he did, I'd already be dead. Before Michelle could argue further, Emma made her way downstairs, her walking boot clumping against each step. When she emerged from the building, J.H. straightened up from his casual lean against the car. In the street light, she could see him more clearly than she had during the chaos of the accident. He was devastatingly handsome, with the kind of presence that commanded attention. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Miss Chen, he said, his voice smooth and accented. I'm glad to see you're recovering. You know my name. I make it my business to know. He gestured to the car. Would you be willing to take a drive with me? There are things we need to discuss, and this isn't the place for such a conversation. Emma knew she should refuse. Every rational part of her brain screamed that getting into a car with a crime boss was possibly the worst decision she could make. But something in his eyes, something honest and direct, made her trust him. Okay, she said. But my sister knows you're here. If I don't come back, you'll come back. J.H. interrupted, a slight smile playing at his lips. You have my word. J.H. drove them to a quiet overlook on the outskirts of the city, where they could see the lights of Seattle spread up below, like a carpet of stone. He helped Emma from the car, his touch gentle, despite his reputation for violence, and they sat on a bench overlooking the view. You didn't come just to check on how I'm healing, Emma said. It wasn't a question. No, J.H. agreed. Though I am glad to see you're recovering well. I came because I know who cut your brake lines, and I thought you deserved to know. Emma's blood went cold. What? How could you possibly? Because the person who tried to kill you did it to get to me, J.H. said, his voice hard. His name is David Marsh. He's a mid-level criminal who's been trying to expand his operations into territory that belongs to my organization. When his overtures were rejected, he decided to make a stand. What does that have to do with me? J.H. turned to face her fully. 3 weeks ago, one of my associates was spotted having lunch at the cafe across from your clinic. Marsh's people misidentified you leaving work as this associate. They thought you were connected to my organization, that hurting you would send a message to me. Emma stared at. In disbelief, you're saying I almost died because of mistaken identity, because some criminal thought I worked for you. Yes, and I'm saying that I've handled the situation. Marsh and his people won't be bothering you or anyone else again. There was something in the way he said it, a finality that made Emma's stomach close. She didn't want to think too carefully about what handled mean and JH's wound. The police, she started. The police will receive an anonymous tip that will lead them to Marsh's operation, along with evidence of the brake line cutting and several other crimes. He'll go to prison for a very long time. Justice will be served, one way or another. They sat in silence for a moment, Emma processing everything she'd been told. It was insane. Her entire life had been turned upside down because of a case of mistaken identity in the criminal underworld. Why did you save me? She finally asked. If you didn't know me, if I was just a random person in a burning car, because it was the right thing to do, J.H. said simply. I've done many things I'm not proud of, Miss Chen. I've made choices that have hurt people, destroyed lives, caused pain, but I'm not a monster who would stand by and watch an innocent woman burn to death. when I could prevent it. Emma looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the conflict in his eyes, the weight of the life he'd chosen, but also something, humanity, conscience, the capacity for good, even if it was buried beneath layers of violence and crime. Thank you, she said softly, for saving me, for finding out who did this, for caring enough to tell me the truth. JH smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less burdened. You're welcome. I've arranged for protection for you and your sister for the next few months, just to be safe. You won't see them, but they'll be there. After that, you should be fine. Marcia's organization will be dismantled, and the message will be clear that you're under my protection. I don't know how to feel about being under a crime boss's protection, Emma admitted. Feel grateful that you're alive to have conflicted feelings about it, JH replied, with a touch of dark humor. He drove her back to Michelle's apartment, and when he helped her out of the car, their hands lingered together for a moment longer than necessary. Will I see you again? Emma asked, surprising herself with the question. JH looked at her, with an expression she couldn't quite read. Regret perhaps, mixed with something like longing. Our words are very different, Miss Chen. You save lives. I do what's necessary in a world most people don't know exists. It's probably better if we don't meet again. You saved my life, Emma reminded him. That makes you a hero in my book, regardless of what else you might be. Something flickered in JH's eyes. Surprise maybe, or gratitude for being seen as something other than a monster. Then let's leave it at that. A single moment of heroism in an otherwise dark life. He got back in his car, but before driving away, he rolled down the window. Miss Chen, if you ever need help, real help, the kind the police can't provide, call this number. He handed her a business card, with nothing but a phone number embossed on. Only use it in a true emergency. But if you call, I'll answer. Emma watched him drive away, the card warm in her hand. She knew she should throw it away, cut all ties to the dangerous world JH Kang inhabited. But instead she tucked it carefully into her wallet, next to the photo of her and Michelle. Some debts, she thought, couldn't be measured by conventional rules. He had given her back her life. The least she could do was trust that if she ever needed him, he would be there. As she made her way back upstairs, Emma realized that her life had been irrevocably changed, not just by the accident, but by the brief intersection with a man who lived in the shadows, who committed crimes and violence, but who had also, in one crucial moment, chosen to be her hero. She didn't know if their paths would cross again, but she knew she would never forget the man who broke through fire and glass to save her, asking nothing in return, except the satisfaction of having done the right thing. And somehow, that made all the difference.